we now, Bill?
Well, we are still in Hart's location in Crawford Notch.
Okay.
And this time we are here to visit Nancy Barton.
Ah, the Nancy Brook Trail.
Yes. And
Yeah.
Nancy Pond and Nancy Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
All named for the same young lady.
And how do you go about getting named, having a name put on so many places?
Well, if you die tragically, you're probably going to get in the
It could
books.
happen, yeah.
And Nancy's story is probably one of the most mournful and tragic stories ever told in the White Mountains.
I think that is very possibly true, although there are some others. But yes, you're right.
Well, this one breaks your heart.
Yeah.
And it still does well over 100 years later.
Yeah.
It still gets you. It's a sad story. And as you can see, there's no marker here. It's just a pile of rocks.
Yeah.
And that is where they found poor Nancy, frozen to death.
Well, how did she get here? I mean, what a place to...
Yeah. And you can see this is November 11th.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty remote and wild place even today.
Yeah.
Nancy Brook is right down here on my right.
On the other hand, you have what used to be the old turnpike
Yes.
right out there, and it's a little bit louder than one would imagine.
Yeah, hopefully it isn't bothersome. But anyway, the story of Nancy is she was a young lady, just 16 years old in 1778. And she was in the employment of Colonel Joseph Whipple of Jefferson.
Yeah.
Now, you may remember that in an earlier video, we covered William Whipple in Portsmouth.
Right, and he was related to William.
He was, yes. I believe they were brothers.
Brothers, yeah.
Nancy was engaged to a young man by the name of Jim Swindell.
Okay.
Could have been Swindle, but it was Swindell.
Well, as it turns out, that would have been appropriate.
He was also employed by Colonel Whipple.
Yeah.
Nancy was set to accompany Colonel Whipple and Jim to Portsmouth, where she would marry Jim.
Yeah.
But the two men, Whipple and Swindell, took off without her. They took it without her. And to add injury to insult, Jim took all of Nancy's savings.
All of her savings.
And that day, Nancy was in Lancaster picking out cloth to make a wedding
dress.
And he took off and with Colonel Whipple. Well, Nancy's friends caught up with her in Lancaster, and they told her what had happened.
Yeah. And
she dropped everything, went back to Jefferson, grabbed a small bundle, and headed out to follow the two men. Well, it was in the winter.
Yeah.
There was an impending snowstorm. And she came close almost to catching him. Apparently Whipple, she knew that Whipple had a campsite down in here. And she found it. And there was nothing but a smoldering fire.
Yeah.
And they had already left.
Yeah.
So instead of hunkering down for the evening, she tried to cross the brook and she fell in. Well, apparently she came back up here, hunkered down, and obviously hypothermia and from being wet and the cold of the evening, the snowstorm, she died. She was found frozen there.
Well, if you can see it a little bit on the side, I think, in the camera. I mean, first of all, that's a fairly steep incline down there, and the river is way down there.
Yeah. Just crawling back up.
Just crawling back up that. Just coming in here to come to this spot, I don't think it's visited that much. I think it maybe used to be, but there's a lot of blowdowns and so on. Now, maybe back then there was a path if Whipple had was it Whipple that had a campsite
where they had a
out
campsite here. Yeah.
But it's not a major hike, but it's we're climbing over some fallen down trees and whatnot to get here.
Well, it's said that Whipple had convinced young Jim that he should join the army.
Yeah.
And he took the money, apparently. Jim took the money to buy a uniform. So, most people cast Whipple as a villain, but I guess he was a patriot. and he was trying to get Jim to, enlist in the army. But between the two of them, they didn't come out looking too good in the end.
No, it seems like you might have let Nancy in on the.
Yeah. Well, Nancy's friend that very night, they knew something probably had gone awry, and they sent out a search party, and they did find her the next morning. And this is, of course, where she lay, and they buried her right here on the spot.
Yeah.
Then there never was a headstone here, but at some time there was a headstone, a slate headstone made, and it still exists. It's in the Notchland Inn, where we just were a few minutes ago.
We've been in there,
and we have a picture of it, and we'll share it with you. And it's inscribed with her name. 1778, Nancy Barton died in a snowstorm in pursuit of her faithless lover. But for whatever reason, they never did place the stone.
Yeah.
As you might expect, there are some that say the trail and the brook are haunted.
Yeah.
And fishermen who are prone to lie anyway. Not me, of course.
No, you never did. No, I know that.
Yes. You're suspect.
No, no, you never said you caught a fish this big.
Yeah, that's true. But I've hiked up here when my son was a young boy.
Yeah.
In grade school, and I used to kid the poor child mercilessly about the ghost of Nancy was here, and we could hear her. I was a mean father, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I talked to my son yesterday and told him where we were going, and he didn't bear any
grudges or resentment.
So,
yeah, okay.
But I guess you should probably know that it is supposedly haunted.
It doesn't. I mean, it's actually a very kind of nice place. If it weren't for the highway over there, I would feel a little differently about it, but I can't say I sense a presence exactly, but I guess you and I aren't very good at that anyway.
No, we failed miserably. But when I did the research on this to begin with for the book, this was one of the first places we ever visited.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, we came here twice.
I think so, yes, it was.
Yeah. And I had some questions, and I found a fellow at who was president of the Jefferson Historical Society, Joe Marshall. I don't know if he still is, but that was a couple of years ago now, or well over a year ago.
Would have been, yeah.
But he turned me on to the Jefferson Town history, which relates the story, and probably the story is well known. And a lot of people who see this will, I know that story.
Yeah.
And, some of them are ghost hunter stories and all that stuff. But the Historical Society in Jefferson and their town history has probably one of the most accurate things. And there is a poem in there, and I'll share this with you, but I want to read these lines. I think they are.
Okay.
Cold the snow at my head, and cold the snow at my feet, and the finger of death at my eyes, closing them to sleep. Let none tell my father or my mother so dear, I'll meet them both in heaven at the springtime of the year.
Yeah.
I think that says it all.
I think it does.
Nancy,
Nancy,
rest in peace.